Next episode of the AV Experience. I'm Ryan Charpentier, joined as always by Ben Goff of Cinema Bureau. We're going to be talking about, is it always better, more better, to have more seats in a theater? I think both of us are going to be in agreement, but I don't know that a lot of people think about the compromises that are made to add more seats. And I think once you think about it, it's going to make more sense, and you're going to be like, oh, if you hadn't thought about it before, man, this is almost common sense, but it's one of those things that gets overlooked quite a lot. But before we get into that, Ben, last time we spoke, you weren't feeling well. You were under the weather. Are you feeling
Still
better?
am. No,
Still am? Oh, man.
Yeah. I'm sitting here with a Lemsip. Do you have Lemsip over there?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we may
Lemsip
do,
is,
just different name.
there we
Lemsip.
go.
What is Lemsip? Oh.
Cold, max strength cold and flu. I mean, I'd love to say it's hay fever, but it's not. I just, kids in primary school, whatever you call primary school, like kindergarten, my youngest type age, just bring germs home, don't they, all the time?
You're going to get sick.
Yeah, my immune system's shot. It's actually why I'm not going to come to Expo. I don't even know if I've told you this. I'm not coming to Expo this year because I just need a year where I avoid some germs.
Well, I didn't want to see you either. So
no, I'm going to give my immune system a chance, and I'm not going to come to Expo this year just to avoid some germs. So
I'm going to laugh when you get sick anyway.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm never really well. So
your body's like, we're sick every time this year. Begin late August, early September. We'll just make it happen.
Yeah. It's fine. Happen. It's I've just found out that I'm going back to Asia next week that my wife doesn't yet know about. So she's going to read that message at some point and discover that next week I'm not going to be home. Maybe the week after as well.
Same theater?
Yeah, we're just going over to do a few tweaks and finishing touches and stuff. So yeah, I'm flying back out to go and play. And it's
Tom says, man up, Buttercup.
Oh God, is Tom on?
Yeah.
Oh, he set a diary reminder to come on the door yesterday. Right, so we'll be slightly controversial today, I think, because last week I failed being controversial. I thought I would get a bit more of a reaction when I said that some A/B testing is a bit disingenuous. But
yeah, you thought you thought you knew where I was going to sit.
Not just you. I thought the chat would be more like outraged. You know, we are confessing that this is objective, and there's me saying, well, there are some flaws to the way that A/B testing's done. Actually, it's not that simple. I thought I was going to get hammered for it, and we'd get a little argument. I thought it'd be fun, and we didn't. So this time I'm going to try harder, and I'm going to say it right. There is one correct way to design a cinema. This is a dedicated room, right? This episode, I've prepped some stuff, and it's dedicated room. The stuff I've prepped, the same things will carry through to multi-use, but all my prep is on dedicated. And I'm going to say, in a dedicated room, there is one correct way to do the layout. There are loads of ways you could do it, and all of them are wrong except one.
They're compromises.
They're wrong. Wrong.
Okay, let's see where we end up. He's a man out there with a hammer. He may not hit the nail every time, but
hopefully now I've annoyed some people enough to have an argument with me in the chat.
It's not a compromise. Fun, it's wrong.
What we're supposed to say, someone told me off the other day, I was on site, and they were like, oh, I've seen some of your YouTubes. You never say like and subscribe. I'm like, no, I'm too geared up on trying to have an argument with people for fun.
No, what? We're not about that. We're not here to be famous. We're here to spread information. If people want to like and subscribe, fine, but that's not why we're here.
Awesome. Well, we have already got a great comment, and I am so on board with what Derek said because it's going to set up the next hour. A cinema without 8 seats is not a cinema.
So mine is not a cinema then.
Throwing it out there right now.
Mine is not a dedicated space then. It is.
Well,
it's a viewing room.
So let's start. Before I bring up some drawings, I've taken the drawing I made for an episode before, and I fiddled around with it to create some more options. But where are we going to start, Ryan? How are we going to start? Got a dedicated room, blank space. What are we going to do first?
You got to figure out how big it is.
Yeah, so the room exists, right? We've got a box. We've got a box with no seats in it, no screen, no speakers.
Are you asking what the general populace does?
Kind of, both. Tom's joined in. He doesn't have a cinema either. No, you definitely don't, Tom. I'm just going to wind him up. The reality is that you have to start replacing seats, right? If you start choosing kit, if you start putting anything else in, including the screen, before you've placed where your seats are going to go, you're doing it wrong. Right? Like, there's just no getting around that. Like, there is
You
no
got to define what the room is. And one of the
right.
biggest things, I love Peter and his car analogies. We always go back to this.
We're going to have some of that today.
When you're picking a car, one of the primary components of picking a car, how many seats do you need? I mean, if you can't fit the number of people in there that you want to fit, you're buying the wrong car.
I'm just going to check. I think he sent me the slide specifically. I might be able to bring it up. So the analogy that Peter does best on this one, and we do use car analogies a lot, but the absolute best one to explain number of seats is, if you want a sports car, don't make me build you a bus.
Yeah.
Right. There are some really comfortable buses and coaches. Hey, I've traveled through South America on luxury coaches. It's like flying business class. They're fully reclining seats. It's lovely. We weren't trying to get there quick. We were trying to get there in comfort. That's fine. If you're looking for performance, you don't find a performance car with 16 seats. They don't exist, right? There is no car you're going to want to take on a track day that has 16 seats. That's not a thing, right? That's a bus. You don't take a bus on a track day. I mean, you probably would, right? But, theoretically.
What does this mean? I mean, I would.
Exactly. I know. I'm like, I bet you would, because you'd try and get the back end out. You'd be drifting it. I could see you.
Even if you did it, you would know that it's a bus on a track. Like, you know there's going to be performance limitations, and you're doing it with those limitations in mind. That's the key there, is you can do this, but there are compromises that you're making in order to allow that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I want to cover here is how sometimes adding more seats has no detrimental effect at all on the best seat. So your best seat is in a place, it's perfect, it's great for the room, and it continues to work no matter what you do around it. That's fine. Do what you want. Keep chucking them in. Where we've got a problem is when adding more seats starts ruining the seats you're actually going to use day to day. So it's probably time for me to pull up Vectorworks.
Pictures, show and tell.
Let me try and do my screen share. Hold on. I want to go window, post reflection, share. Hopefully, can you now see my screen? That work? Yeah. So let me try and reframe this a little bit and see if I can make that work. So, right, we've got the room that we used in a previous episode. Hang on. Right, I'm going to try and do this viewing the screen share so I can see what I'm actually seeing, not my actual screen. Right, so it's not a huge room, but it's not small. Internally, this room is just shy of 5 meters wide. You can do the conversion on that. What's that? 17, 18 feet? 5 by 6. So it's not a small room.
So you're like 16 to 17 feet by 20 feet, somewhere in there.
Right. And when we used this room previously, we put 3 seats in it. So if I simplify it down, okay. This screen has got a frame on it. I'm going to ignore the frame for simplicity here, right? Let's just quickly look at what our viewing angle is and see how nicely this works out. Oh, it's as if I planned it.
Look at that.
It's just over 61 degrees. That's a really fun place to be sat, I'll be honest. I used to have a preference a bit lower than this. The more I've seen really big screens, the more I have a preference to go quite big. So actually, I'm quite happy with where we put those 3 seats and that screen size. I can tell you how big this screen is, because that will tell me. This screen is, it's a default off-the-shelf one. Right, it's a 16 by 9. It's 3.65 meters wide. So It's a
almost 12 feet, so
12,
11
yeah,
feet.
just 7'9" by 12 foot as a 16:9, and that's a really nice viewing angle, right? So we could add the speakers back in there. Pretty happy. Keep the same seats, same room. How happy are we now?
I mean, the main seat's fine. Hasn't
right?
changed.
So exactly that. I've kept that main seat. I've literally just thrown another one in right behind it. So we've not compromised that front row. All the speakers, if I had the speakers back into this drawing, which I think I still have speakers in this drawing. Yeah, give or take. I can probably put some dispersion angles back on. Can I? Hold on. That one. Yeah, okay. So we can see some dispersion. Front left got moved in our other video to be a wide. Fine. Don't worry about it. But
this is the new way of theaters, left channel.
No front lefts.
No front left.
It
People have been
became a wide
designing
in our
theaters
previous
wrong.
video, and I haven't moved it back.
You're not supposed to have a front left.
So in this option, we've not compromised that front row, right? We've left it exactly where it was. Viewing angle's still great. Speakers are all lined up on it.
Yep. I want to come back to this in a minute later, though, and talk about potential compromises.
100%. But we've now got a real problem with that back row. If you're ever planning to use it, they are not good seats.
No. They're the
I don't
in-law
know
seats.
how many degrees off axis they are, but it's a lot. I mean, if I put on our dispersion 3, even once we start looking at wider dispersion angles, realistically, if you're sat in that middle seat, no matter where you angle those speakers, well, I mean, you could angle them straight across the back row, in which case they get sound and the main seats don't. You'd be ruining the front seats for them. So we really want to keep seats at least 2 foot from a wall, if not 3 feet from a wall would be nice. 5 feet would be great, but realistically 2 to 3 feet. That row is not great.
That's a crap row. Let's be real.
So let's turn these dispersion angles off. Oh, hold on. That's not worked well.
Hey, look, the rear row's better.
Yeah, don't ask me why I can't turn those off.
Can you just hit Control Z and will it turn them off?
Oh, hold on. I thought I turned them off. There we go. Don't worry. Oh. I thought I turned them off and I hadn't. So suddenly now we bring both rows forward. We're in a pretty good place, audio-wise.
Great.
They're all, there is no seat here that is terrible. Okay, the way I've got the surrounds isn't great because no row's getting the best sound from that. You'd need to be looking at wider dispersion. But within the area of that speaker's firing, we're still not crazy wide here. All of those seats pretty much are still going to get pretty good there. We would shuffle those around. We could change the angles. We could make those 2 rows work. So now the compromise is, what did we do to our viewing angles? Because I've not moved the screen. So let's have a quick look. What do we get off our front and back row? Remember, we had 60 as it was, and I think people's preference is going to change here. And this is why you have to do this first, is your viewing angle preference is really important. And that is your preference. We can't define that. We can't tell you what it's going to be. You need to test it and find what you like. Why is that not doing what I want? That one to that one. Okay, right. We've got 50 and 80. Well, I don't hate 50. 80 is a bit big, but it's not absolutely terrible.
It's not awful.
So the difference between
is your seating distance to that?
How far is it?
Yeah, front row.
1 second, let my computer pick up. Eye line to screen, about 2.3 meters on a. How wide is that screen? That screen we said was 3.6 wide. Yeah, you're at like 75% of the width. It's big, right? It's not ideal.
I mean, that's actually about my room.
Right.
So it's preference. It's absolutely preference. But to some people, this would be a compromise.
Right. So now what we've done is to make the audio more even for all those seats, let's just say 60 degrees was our optimum. 60 degrees is lovely. I love 60, right? So if this was mine, I'd want to be around 58 to 62.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've got no seat that gives me the viewing angle I wanted in return for every seat having a more even sound.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a compromise there, right? You know, which is more important, having a viewing angle we want? We could make that screen bigger and still get 60 on the back row. We could make it smaller and bring the front row down to 60. So now you've got to start balancing where we've put those seats against how big we want the screen to be. But you can't choose the screen size till you know where you're going to put your seats, right? So this becomes an iteration. You're going to go around in circles. We could place the seats, change the screen size, doesn't quite do what we want, move the seats, adjust the screen size. You're just going to keep it around. But me hit left, lock my mouse so it doesn't do that. That's where this can become a problem, is once you've got that second row in,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to start thinking about viewing angles.
Yep.
So I've made this particular one a scope screen. So that now might be your compromise. To get the viewing angles to work, your only option is to go with a scope screen.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you can't see the bottom of it.
And this is where bigger screens start to become a problem.
Right.
Because what we have found is the larger the screen, and you'll agree with it, not the larger the screen, optimal seating position for your head is almost smack dab at the middle of the screen.
Yeah.
TV, you don't really want to be looking up. When you start
I
looking
like
up,
to be maybe a third of the way up. So I don't mind a bit of
the idea,
I kind of slouch.
The problem with this is, even in the front row, your head height is almost at the very bottom of the screen.
Yeah. Right. So I just turn that back to a 16 by 9. If you want a 16 by 9 with clearance, look at it's now hitting the ceiling, right? That's
look at the viewing angle of where the head would be to the top of the screen.
Oh,
and people don't consider this. They always look at the horizontal viewing angle, but they fail to look at the vertical viewing angle. And if you want big screens, this is the only reason that I think this works in the Experience Center, is because your eye line is smack dab in the middle of that screen. The screen runs wall to wall, floor to ceiling.
Yeah, and 40-degree head tilt to the top of the screen.
Awful.
That's not good, right? That's not good. So you've got to kind of start to think now, what do I want? Apologies, I'm trying to use two different mice here. What do you actually want to achieve? So
second row's not bad, though.
No, the back row's not terrible, but I mean, look how high the screen is in the room.
Yeah.
Where are you going to put the speakers? Like, if you put the speakers at ear height, they're only just going to clear the row in front. They're going to be right at the bottom of the screen. You've got, I'd like the speakers to be more middle of screen. Well, if we put them more middle of screen, they're just sailing over the heads of that back row. The reality is, with this limitation of this much head height, I would not do a 16:9 screen. I don't think it works in that room. So if we turn it back to a 235, Vectorworks doesn't have 2.39 as standard, but it does have 235. That's now the size it was. It's much nicer, right? If I go back to that left view.
Still not ideal.
No, but look how much nicer it just got by, you're not up here anymore. Suddenly that's way down. 32 degrees. Okay, it's still not great. Let's be fair.
Still not great.
Still not great. I mean, okay, right. Well, humor me, because we've got options here. We could make that back row higher, How much room have I got? I don't know how tall this room is. I can't remember how tall we made it. What have we got to play with? We've still got, hold on, I pulled the wrong thing there. 2.4 meters. This room's actually really tall. So you've got plenty of head height standing here. There's a bit of an error there because I've got multiple seats here. But we could just take these seats higher, right? Let's take them up more. Delete one of them. There we go. Maybe a bit too high. But we've got options. We could bring that seat higher. That's going to help us clear the viewing angle in this room, but only because this room's tall. If you're in a standard normal residential room, your room's not this tall.
But what other issues does this create now?
Because we're doing it in not a huge room, let me wind this back, try and put that seat back to where we had them. Well, we'll look at the speakers in a second. There will be an audio issue as well.
Yes, that was what I was getting at.
I'm just going to pan off. Right. So what I've done over this side, right, this is the same room as the one we just looked at. If you take the 2.35 screen that gave you the nice viewing angles, that's how big your 16:9 image would be on that screen. So it's pretty tiny now. Let's have a look and see what it's going to be. Top plan. Now from the back row, and ignore the fact that I'm going right out to the screen. I know that there is a screen there and it's smaller than that, but I'm being lazy. Okay, to here. Okay, well, you're at 40.
That's not terrible, but not great.
For me, that's the very smallest I'd ever want to be. Like, I think 40 is not very immersive. And I think we have to mention that there are traditional cinema standards that say 40 is fine as such. Like, if we look at the THX commercial standards, they're kind of saying, furthest row, 40 degrees. It's not terrible, but those rows are not designed for the very best experience. They're designed for where can we comfortably charge people to sit and they're not going to be disappointed. If you're spending a lot of money to build your own room, 40's it's not a really immersive experience.
No.
But now your front row for 16:9 actually suddenly becomes quite good, I think. Grab that angle. Because we were a bit big on the front row before. 7.5, that's not terrible. So you're almost now in a position where the back row is pretty nice for scope. The front row is pretty good for 16:9. I could live with that. You set the audio up in a way that actually we've got a calibration for front row, calibration for back row. I just change seat I sit in, if it's scope or not. That, I don't think squeezing 2 rows in here is beyond making this a good room. I think you can still make a nice room in that size with 2 rows.
You're pushing it. I guess it depends on the level of compromise that you're comfortable with.
Right. Absolutely. Exactly. And that's the thing, is how much compromise. So at the moment, I've got 6 seats in here. Let me find. Oh, it hasn't frozen. Let me find. Okay. This version. What do we think about an even number of seats now?
In one row?
Well, I mean, here I've just done them on the back row so that you can clearly see the difference. But even's interesting, isn't it? Like, from a center channel perspective, I can live with this, especially if we're using coax speakers. The amount that this seat and this seat are off axis is maybe kind of moving to ideal for a coax speaker. So actually, this might be more beneficial than the row ahead if you're using coax and you want to be slightly off your reference axis. Like, that might be preferable. It might not. The question really becomes now, if I turn on surround left and surround right. So I've done the math. Already, and I'm going to say math because most of the people watching are US. We all know that really it's mathematics, right? And that there's an S on maths. I'm just humoring the fact that most of these viewers are American.
Okay, you can just tell us that we're dumb. It's fine.
Yeah, no, it's just
no, I get it.
Misused language. It's fine. So I've done that. I won't share that screen because it's we can, but realistically, from a surround speaker to the middle of that arm, which is where you'd calibrate it, is about 2.1 meters. To the middle of this seat here, 1.8, and to the middle of this seat, about 2.6 in meters. So if you are sat either side, like these are still the two best seats in that room, you've got a 3.2 decibel difference from one surround to the other if you calibrate it to the middle. So both people sat in these seats have got a 3 dB offset. They're going to hear the surround that they're closest to 3 dB louder than the one further away. If you calibrated that to the seat, right, so you still make an RSP, a money seat, off to the side, then that differential will grow, and the person, so like you could make it so these are both the same level in seat 2. The person in seat 3 now is going to end up like 5 dB difference because you've turned one up a bit, you've turned the other down a bit. Actually, they end up really kind of not getting the same immersion from the surround they should. Everything in the whole surround field is going to be skewed off to the left.
What Ben's talking about is you lose 6 dB for every doubling of distance, and this is anechoic. There's a lot of factors like reflections and stuff that play into this that I think we'll talk about in the future, but that's what he's talking about. So as you move further away from a speaker, that halving distance increases, which is a big reason why bigger rooms are more beneficial. But in these smaller rooms, when you're dealing with two speakers and your half distance is, say, 8 feet, that doubling happens over a very short period of time. And so if you're off by a few feet, you can drastically differentiate between the sound that's coming out of one side speaker versus the other. And that's what Ben's talking about. And that's why you're getting that difference.
Yeah, and we can think about this in ratios. So if you take the distance to one position and the distance to another position, or the distance to one speaker and another speaker, you can think about how different they are as a ratio. And as the room gets bigger, and this is why commercial cinemas work
really well
to give quite even response across a big area, like the distance from the center channel to the front row is already quite big, right? It could already be 20 feet by the time it's actually from where it's mounted. Depending on the cinema, it could be quite a long way. So from 20 feet to 40, which might be most of the way back now, we've only got double the distance. In your room, if you end up with one speaker at 1 meter and another at 5 times different. And though that ratio being that different has a huge effect.
Yep.
So you want to keep the ratios of how different things are as close as you can. And the bigger the room gets, the easier that happens. Like that's just simple physics.
Now remember this is anechoic, and reflections, especially in smaller rooms, drastically can impact these numbers. So it's good to plan anechoically, but it is not going to be that simple of, I'm going to lose 6 dB or 6 dB over a doubling of distance. It's not going to happen. We
know that it doesn't behave that way.
No,
in the real world, it does over short distances. So from 1 meter to 2,
yes,
it's going to be probably close to 6. From 2 to 4 will be less.
Changing.
It might now be 3.5, 4 actually in room with all the reflections. From 4 to 8, it's not going to be more than 3 probably, because so much now of what you're hearing is reflections off the room. But in that near field bit where reflections aren't dominant, it does change really radically.
And it depends largely on characteristics of the speaker, dispersion, how the theater's set up. Is it symmetrical, asymmetrical, absorption, diffusion? All that kind of stuff can pretty readily affect these numbers. So it's great to plan though for anechoic, and it will give you an idea of best locations, which is what we're talking about here. Just want to go on an offset and tangent to give some people some information about that.
But I think this becomes a really important question, right? So from a viewing line perspective, 4 seats behind 3 might be beneficial because you've now not got a head directly in front of yours. It's less distracting when
Sure.
the two rows are offset. So you've got to consider this compromise here. If you were really aiming for 6 seats, is 7 better or worse? Well, if you're going to sit in the back row, you've got audio compromises to consider, maybe at the benefit of slightly improving sight lines. So you need to choose, like, and this comes down to how a room's going to be used. It's why we talk about the sports car versus a bus. Maybe you need a bus and you're happy with a bus and you need a room that caters to 16 people and you're always going to use it with 16 people and you're fine with the fact that it's a bus. But I would say most cinemas are probably used 1, 2, 3 people regularly, like day to day. You don't have your friends over all the time. You don't have the extended family over all the time. It's like day to day, it's probably the people who live in that home.
My saying
right?
is always design for the 99% use case. Do not design for the 1%.
Right. And it's fine to keep adding more seats like we did with this one here, right? When we put that rear row at the back, it had no compromises at all on the front row. So these seats are doing no harm.
Well,
they're not good.
We'll talk about that. It could.
Sure.
Create
it could
issues.
limit where you put subs. It could have but big picture, they're not doing any harm.
No. Big picture, that's the best location that they can go in that particular space.
Best location in terms of not making the front ones worse. It's not, they're going to be terrible. Like the viewing angle's terrible from back there. I didn't see how big it was. How big was it? It's terrible. Did we measure it?
It looked awful.
It's not going to be great.
I think it's like 40.
Okay, it's 41. Okay, because this room's obviously quite big from the front row. So, okay, so it's not terrible, but audio-wise, it's terrible.
Audio-wise, it's atrocious.
Yeah. But if you're just going to sit your drunk uncle there once a year to watch the Super Bowl, does he care?
Who cares?
Does he care? So,
no.
So actually, that might be the way to throw more seats in without compromising a front row at all. And do you even care if there's visual occlusion? Like, if this is just a drunk uncle seat, do you know what? Maybe they can't see the bottom foot of the screen. I'd never do that in a seat we were going to use regularly. But if it was a matter of my seat versus my drunk uncle who comes once a year, I don't really care, right?
Yep.
I genuinely don't care how bad that seat gets if it's only used once a year.
Design for the 99% use case. Do not design for the drunk uncle.
Right.
You're compromising. At the very end of the day, all you're doing here is defining the use case of the space. Once you define the use case of the space, you start with ideal and then start deciding what compromises am I willing to make to reach whatever use case or outcome I'm trying to obtain. Now
we've got a room. This is a a decent size. Let's work that out in feet. Right. So we're 8 and a bit versus 6 and a bit. It's a decent sized room.
Yeah.
What is that in feet, Ryan? Hang on.
It's like 21 feet wide by 26, 27 feet long.
Well, 6 by 8.3. I don't know why it ended up at that size.
It's a big room.
Yeah, it's a decent sized room now. So I think most people with a room that big would feel like 3 rows is sensible. When you look at that plan view, you don't look at that and think immediately there's way too many seats in this room. Right? Or would you? Like, I think I can see the foibles, the problems having designed loads of room. Sorry, Big Street just asked. So it's about 6 meters by 8.3. 8.3 long internal dimensions on this room. Like when we see architects plan a cinema, they're drawing up a house.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the cinema room. They just put some seats in. if you're not an expert, you'd think that looks quite light on, there's loads of space in there. They probably actually have put more seats in. That doesn't look terrible. So the question is it terrible? Let's see where we end up.
It's going to be 50 something.
53. Okay. I can live with that.
Mm-hmm.
I can absolutely live with 53. Back row, I don't think here is going to be terrible.
No.
I reckon it's going to be smaller than I'd like. Oh, hold on. Why isn't that selecting? Let me deselect and try again. My machine's getting unhappy. That one to that one. 37. Okay. I mean, I would be. My kids would still be happy with that. Like my 5-year-old would be perfectly happy at 37 degrees.
This is 80, high 80s.
Yeah, right. Nearly 90. My 5-year-old would not be happy at nearly 90. That's not a row that nobody in my direct family would ever want to sit in that row. That's too big for my wife, my kids, for me. So now you've got this whole row that is
a waste.
No one really wants to sit there.
Mm-mm.
And that's fine, except for what it does to your viewing angles, to your sight lines. These are not big risers, but you've got to see over that screen. It's oh, hold on. Okay, yeah, actually it's from the back row, not too bad. But in this case, from the middle row, even where I've got that screen, and that screen's already touching the ceiling, you still can't see over the front row. So the really nice row actually can't have that size screen because you won't see the bottom of it. That's a shame.
So what would you do in this space? Because personally, I would take out the front row, put the new front row on the floor and raise the second riser. And then lower the screen.
I mean, you've got a load of options. I would want to keep my ear height off of the halfway point of the room height. So I don't even know where the halfway point of the room height is. Let's find it. Midpoint. Okay, so I definitely don't want my ear height on that. That's gone really badly for the back row. I hadn't checked that before I did it.
Yeah, but if you lower the mid row and then raise the back row, it stops being a problem.
Yeah, we'd get away from that. We've got designs where that front row of seats are
loungers,
very low. So, like, essentially, they'll fold flat. The back can be reclined all the way flat. So when they're not being used, you get them completely out of the way. If I had choice, like depending on how the rest of this house worked, where it is, what the conditions are, I'd quite like to dig a pit for those speakers. I've seen that done plenty of times. Imagine if we could actually just build a... Oh, there was more seats there when I moved. If you've got an option to just lower a small section of this room, just a section that you put some seating in, like a conversation pit of old, you're already digging a basement maybe. Well, you might be able to make, without making the room bigger overall, just a small section you lower to get a front row of seats in. I could live with that. But yeah, it's not ideal. What I don't know what screen shape this was. What are we at? It's a... Oh, okay, right. Actually, that's a 1.89. So that's because that would be native to the projector I was thinking of when I drew it. We could get a really big 2.35 in there, or a not so big 16:9 image. That's still too tall. So let's make our height 1800. That'll work to get your viewing angles. Oh, hold on. Shift that up. What do you reckon? Do you want that room, Brian?
Nope.
No. I don't know how small we just made our.
That
oh God.
awful. That
yeah,
looks
doesn't it?
that is terrible.
That is not good. Although the front row is probably not so bad now.
Front row is fine.
Front row might have just got quite pleasant.
Viewing wise, front row is fine. Audio wise, front row not great.
Yeah, and we'll look at center channel in a second. But how small did that come out? I probably got down into 6. Oh, it's still 71. Okay, it's still big. But now the back row is going to be terrible on a 16 by 9. Let's have a look. Back row.
20.
What do you reckon? About 32 or something, smaller than that? That one to that one. 28.
That's gross.
Yeah, I wouldn't watch telly on 28.
No. Maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, is times have changed. And that's why when everyone quotes the old cinematic standards as this is what matters. I mean, could you imagine if you
give me this? Take out the front row.
Yeah. Okay, 1 second. My computer's bogging down. It doesn't like streaming and drawing at the same time.
I mean, you don't have to. You can leave it there if you. We'll just ignore it, and then give me a floor to ceiling, wall to wall screen.
Oh, okay. Right, front row's gone, and you want a big screen. What ratio do you want your screen to be?
As big as you can make it.
Okay, let's start at 1.89, which we'll use some masking on that. Width, let's go 5 meters. Will that fit? I reckon we could probably get that to fit. Yeah.
Yep. Then lower the front row to the floor.
Okay, hold on. Let's go left. Just quick turn those speakers off. Grab all of that and drag it down. And then where do you want your back row?
I don't know that you even necessarily need to move it. You would want to move it off the halfway point, but you're pretty close. I'd probably raise it a little bit.
Let's quickly see if I stick a platform under that in this room height. How much head height have we got left? Oh, still 2.3 meters. This is a really tall room.
Yeah.
This is a 3 meter tall room. What's that, like 16 foot?
2 point, yeah. That's a big room. She big girl. Then step down to the bottom. And what are your viewing angles now?
So, like, let's be fair. This is not going to work in a traditional normal room.
Absolutely not.
We're talking dedicated room here because this is going to probably been dug in a basement for this purpose. Hence why it's tall.
Absolutely not. This would absolutely not work in a normal space. But for big spaces, moving towards an ideal. And then actually what I might do in the rear row is move it either to 3 seats or 4 seats or 6 to offset. But doesn't matter in this position.
Right.
So what are we at now? You're probably like 40 something, and
having not moved those seats, like we might shift them around if there's only 2 rows, but what have we got? 61. Lovely.
That's almost, and then
43. Perfectly acceptable. Right. Yeah. And what that now means is that middle row is uninterrupted. It's a great angle. We've got a big screen. Like, that's impressive. If you've got 12 friends, I haven't. So I would, I don't
either.
There genuinely is not that many people in the world that like me. So
if I told my wife that I was going out to dinner with friends, she'd go, "You don't have any friends."
Yeah. I mean, if I ever tried to pull I'm going to see the boys or I'm going to see friends, Who? Name them.
Tom doesn't like you. Why would you go
There's
see him?
no, I mean, no, let's be fair. Tom tolerates me. I do have like 2 friends.
I would actually probably make the screen a little bit wider, but that's and you have the ability to do that in this space. Given the viewing
Yeah.
angle, I'd wanna encroach on 70 for the front row.
It's worth pointing out the reason this screen is not on that back wall in every case, it's been the same. It's what, 450, just shy, 18 inches, is enough room to put speakers behind it.
Yep.
So if you do these drawings and you throw that screen right up against the wall when you're doing your planning, the whole point of an acoustically transparent screen is to put speakers there. So make sure you've left enough room to build a false wall with speakers. That's why they're out. I hadn't mentioned that on this video. Yeah, you could maybe go bigger. Now that's interesting because, right, it's 5 meters wide. Let's see how it looks when we mask that to other formats. 16 by 9 at 5 meters wide. Literally fills the entire front wall. If you were starting off at 16 by 9, but I would, oh, hold on, bring it back to where it was. Okay, 2637 was its height. 16 by 9, I'm going to mask it down to that height. Yeah, okay, so we lose a bit of the sides. It becomes 4.8. Those viewing angles still work perfectly. And if we go scope at 5 wide. Now, here's where this would become fun, right? Because if you've got a Lumagen or a MadVR in the system,
Yep.
I wouldn't necessarily be tied to where that image is going to go on the screen. With both of those options, let me make this orthogonal and move there. We've got all this real estate we're going to mask if we start off with a bigger screen. We can choose where we want scope to be within that area. So it might be that you choose to put scope up higher, lower, you might have in the middle. Often, I don't put scope bang in the middle of a bigger screen when we mask it down. We'll mask it asymmetrically to get it where we want it.
Depending on the viewing conditions.
So I think 5 meter wide in that room is a really nice size.
The beauty of going big, and this is what I've realized of doing this professionally, is it provides flexibility, right? You have the ability to change things. When I was designing the MadVR Experience Center, frankly, I did it out of laziness because, and you could do it in this space. I made the entire front wall the screen because I didn't have to design a front wall. The screen was my front wall. And if I decided, oh, this is too big, masking panels, baby. And then I don't have to deal with it. It's now an acoustically transparent front wall. So I prefer personally in design choice, full front wall screens because you don't necessarily have to use them, especially in conjunction with MadVR and or Lumagen. You're able to have tremendous control, and you're also not stuck using standard aspect ratios. So I could take and design a screen to fill the wall, regardless of what it is, and then use a video processor in order to change that image's size, in MadVR's case, using custom zoom configuration or NLS, so that it fills all of that screen and just provides tremendous flexibility. Now, Ben is getting a bit egregious here.
I'm proving a point because we've all seen rooms like with too many seats in.
Yes.
Right. And that's before we even look at the section view. You know, this is where it becomes every seat is going to get like you're going to end up, even on this room, which is 3 meters tall.
This is a bus.
You're not going to make that work. It's like, hey, I haven't even started putting speakers back in, but if we humor ourselves and put some speakers in, it's not going to work. Like here, back row is going to be totally awful. Middle 3 rows here aren't terrible. Like that's going to work, but you're not going to, it's not going to be great. Like once you've angled in your front left and right, they are going to be quite a long way off axis. How far is that off axis to the back row? It's not terrible actually. It's not great. It was that one to that one. 20 degrees. That's like, so even your nearest speaker is 20 degrees off axis to make this work. It's not great. And so this would be a case of now where we're adding so many seats, we're making all of them bad. Because that would, the section view of that would be terrible.
Yeah.
I don't even know what heights they're going to be at yet. Like, how tall have we got to get up here? We're going to be.
Can you imagine if that cinema was like that, where the third row is really high and the back row is on the floor?
I mean, even if you're like that, like it's not going to work, is it?
No.
It just isn't going to work. It's just not going to work. So this is why I say, and I was being intentionally a little combative, but there is one right way of designing a cinema, and that is starting with seating position and screen. You put seats in, you put a screen in. Does it work? You change the seats, you change the screen. You keep changing those two things until it works. That's it. That is the only correct way to lay a cinema out. Then, which projector you choose, like all of these things, what the screen fabric is, does it need a video processor? What speakers are you going to choose? How many of them? They are all determined after the number of seats you've got in there and the screen are placed.
They're used as tools to make that experience happen. But to dictate what that experience is, you have to define the number of seats and the people going in and having that experience.
Right.
Again, do not design for the 1%. Define and figure out and spend time thinking about this. How is this space going to be used? It may not be a dedicated cinema. It may not be a dedicated theater, and that's okay. You may find that I want this space to be used for this, and this as well, and that's fine. But as long as you have that definition, you can design the space with those needs in mind. If you don't
100%.
do this, and then you try and jam that into a space that's already been designed, you're just going to run into a bad time. You're going to have experiences that are lackluster or not meeting your expectations. And it's not the proper way to do this. Everything is used as a tool to meet an experience, to meet a definition. And if you don't define the definition or the experience you're trying to have, you're going to use everything as a hammer. And that's not the right way to do it.
Right. I'm going to upset some furniture suppliers now. But seats are expensive too.
They are.
Right? It doesn't matter where, if you go and buy specific cinema seats, they are expensive. So the difference between 3, 5, 8, if you've got a fixed budget for a room and you start dropping
your budget,
right? You're burning a lot of budget on seats that you're never going to sit in.
Well, not only that, I don't like cinema seats.
No.
Personally, I think the seat, not enough people talk about this. The seat itself, in a lot of cases, is a compromise.
Yeah.
Think about how high a lot of cinema seats are and how a lot of them, when you're sitting in them, your ear line is below the back of the seat. What does that do to all of your rear surrounds?
Right.
Can't hear it.
I've used, for all of these drawings, I've used a cinema seat on purpose because they've all got an arm between every seat with cup holders. Okay. I don't like traditional cinema seats with arms. If I'm watching a film with my wife or my kids, I damn well want to sit with my wife and kids.
I mean, Ben, we would cuddle too. It's okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's when I do need Tom. Steph might lend him to me for a little cuddle.
Tom, you're needed.
So, I don't like. I can live without a cup holder. I'm fine.
There's other ways around cup holders. Like you can. I saw there was a short on Facebook, and it was somebody that just took a tabletop and then used corner braces on the bottom and just screwed in a flat piece, and they just put it between the cushions. And then I have one for the Mad VR Experience Center that I bought off Amazon. It's a box that has storage in it, and then it has 2 cup holders that are on gimbals so that it won't spill, and I can just sit it, and then I've got cup holders. The more I'm in these spaces, the more I do this, the less I like cinema seats, and the more I like traditional couches, especially if they're low back, and loungers. Because
Yeah.
when I watch, and this is not for everybody, this is just my personal opinion, so don't take this as this is how it needs to be. I like to sprawl out. I don't necessarily like my legs going straight off. I'm usually laying kind of sideways.
Yeah.
I'm doing something, and I want a more inviting space. To me, a cinema seat is not necessarily inviting. It's kind of closed off in its own little bubble. And I don't think people think about this enough. The
Right.
aesthetic of the room, people are like, "Oh, it needs to be this, this, and this." Man, the aesthetic, if it's not inviting and it wants you to feel comfortable there, you're not going to use it as much.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna happen. And this directly impacts how many seats are gonna fit in the space.
Right.
Defining how you wanna use it, again, how you want to enjoy the content, how you wanna be in the space defines how many seats are gonna fit. Now, there are some chairs, and they are quite expensive. Movia makes
Yeah.
some that I really
Makes nice
like.
stuff.
They are super expensive, but they're super cool where you have a traditional chair couch that moves into a chase lounger. So
Yeah.
you can have the best of both depending on what you are, but they do get quite expensive. What I have now, I just have a center traditional seat, and then the outsides have chases, and it works great. And you know
Yeah.
what? That entire couch was probably the same amount cost wise as one cinema seat.
Right. And that's interesting, that Shay's point. Those rooms I drew, I was giving just about enough room to recline a seat, but not
Mhm.
enough room to recline it and then still walk round it.
Yes.
Realistically, you're gonna space those if they're all recliners, the row spacing is gonna be way worse than I drew.
Yeah.
Like, we were showing kinda like best case for
Yeah.
how close you could cram them in. Now, the one I hate it. It drives me nuts, is those arms are fine, right? If you want traditional cinema seating and you want cup holders and you want arms, it's great. If you have an even number of seats in your main row, so whatever your best row is, just lose that middle cup holder, right?
Mhm.
Have at least two seats that are both quite close. You know, even if you go like two singles with an arm and then like it's a double in the middle, have a double in the middle where like, and my favorite double would be like for that double to maybe be a fixed chaise and it doesn't have a middle. So you can, if you're on your own, sit bang in the middle. Like it's a two-seat sofa, but it's like it doesn't have a gap to fall down, right? So you
Mhm.
make a two-seat bit. If there's two of you, you're quite close. You both get a good sound. If there's one, you can sit perfect. What drives me nuts is when the arm has got the best performance in the room. And that's just frustrating, isn't it? Like, imagine the best
Designed for the
place to
armrest.
be is where the Diet Coke is. That's like, that's
Put
not
a
cool, is
saddle
it?
on it. All right, so we talked about viewing angles. Now let's talk a little bit about speakers and the
Yeah.
issues that I run into with them. Because even in some of those ideal spaces where we were talking about, oh, this is great viewing angle wise, they can create issues with speakers.
Yeah. It's I would say one of the biggest things actually is gonna be like low frequency. We've talked already in a previous episode about where is going to be ideal for seats. So you
Mhm.
want to stay off of the halfway line. You want to stay off a quarter. You want to stay off three quarters. You want to stay off the back wall. Well, we're already limiting positions where seats can go that are going to mitigate the worst of the early room modes. Like by the time you're not on the halfway line, the three quarters, the back, right? We're already limiting where they're going to go. So for low frequency, that's a challenge. But where do you even put subs? If you've got a huge riser, now if you've got three tiers and you're pushing out that back row pretty wide, where do you physically even put the subs?
Don't know.
It
Don't know.
it starts to change everything. Like, you know, when we showed that subwoofer diagram a couple of weeks ago, showed it in two dimensions. It's easy, right? We just lay them out, we come in quarter points. Well, suddenly now you've got 3D elevation, like rear subs have got to come up. They're going to interact differently with the riser than they do with the room. Right, the bigger that riser gets, the more of a challenge it gets. You've got to make sure it's solid enough that it's not boomy, because you don't want it like becoming another source of audio. You don't want it to ring, but you don't want it so stiff that it's boring and there's no tactile feel through
Yeah.
it. Um, the more seats you put in, the more complicated that riser gets, and it's impossible to keep on getting every seat to sound good as you keep putting more in. So, like the learning here, I think, is if you are focused, like if you're going to use this room as a small family, 2, 3, 4 people, position those seats. Oh,
Just use one
wait,
row.
right. Get those in. Then anything you can put around it without moving those at all, fine. But as soon as you move that row to get more in, consider if you really want to do that.
Yeah. Consider if the compromise is worth it. I argue that the majority of theaters that go in, you don't need more than one row. I think in most cases, you don't. And then if you add more people, the people that are going in there for that temporary experience, in most times, do not care. They're there for fun. They're not there for
Right,
ideal. Hell, even if they are there for the ideal, you give up your main seat because you get to experience it
right.
all the time. Bring in bean bags, bring in temporary chairs. Maybe you put a bar or like a low top table behind the couch, even though that is an audio experience. You're able to get or a compromise. You're able to get more seating in without leveraging these poor compromises that happen from permanent
Yeah.
dedicated seats that you're bringing into these spaces. Less is more, guys. The more seats you have, the more compromises you're going to have to make unless your space is absolutely enormous.
I didn't draw one row of sofa seats and a bar, but that's in a small room. I do that quite often.
I do that quite often. It does create some audio issues
Sure.
that can be present back behind, but if you're willing to deal with that compromise, it can be a great time. I had that in my previous theater. I was unwilling to do it next because the current theater is, hey, we're going uncompromising as much as possible. But for a lot of people's use cases, it's a great option.
Yeah.
Great option.
And I love how things evolve what we don't even find in Discovery. So, like, I have a room where we did this, a lovely sofa. It had a fixed chaise at one point. It's got some recliners. So, like, this wonderful sofa that would seat the family who live there, right? 2 adults, 2 kids, enough seating. And during Discovery, we talked about, when the football's on, like proper football, not like hand egg, like actual football. Um, you know what hand egg is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just checking. So we're going to have more friends over, and the bar evolved to sit in this space at the back of the room for when friends come over to watch football, and it's going to be beers and it's going to be friends and sports. And when I went back, first time I went back, kind of, and the client's wife was not initially convinced. Right? Why would we want to put a bar in here? That's weird. Like, not convinced of the idea. We showed her some renders of it, and she liked how it looked, so we proceeded. So I went back and kind of like, how are you getting on with the bar? Oh, I love it. It's amazing. I use it all the time. Right? I wasn't expecting that. She went, no, it's brilliant. The kids have their friends over. I have a coffee morning on the back with the mums. We fill the sofa up with kids and we do coffee on the back row. We love it. Like, we use that bar all the time. How many times has Barla had beers friends on the back? Oh, that's never happened. Right. So,
So the one that wanted it doesn't use it, and the one that didn't want it is the one
but
that uses it. Yeah.
thankfully it evolved, and actually they love it because it really worked for them. But
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't find that out in Discovery. We never would have come to the you're going to have a coffee morning on the back row while the kids game and do what the kids do. Never uncovered that, but it's how they use it, and it does make that space way more multifunctional. Like, it's a
Yeah.
dedicated room for entertainment, but now you can do a lot more in it as a family with guests and friends than if they tried to squeeze 2 rows of seating in, they would
Mhm.
have it would have killed the whole room.
Can you bring up that subwoofer active diagram that you have that shows the waves and how they propagate through the room? Do you have that available?
Maybe. You've put me on the spot there, and I've got no
Sorry.
idea. I'm not good at filing things. I've got no idea where I
Oh,
filed that.
no.
Would have been a GIF probably I made it as.
I
So
know where
let's
everything of mine is. What do you mean? I'd hate to see your desktop.
yeah, it's not great.
I
You
have
know,
no icons on my desktop.
the easiest way to find it probably isn't how I'm. Oh, do you know what? I found it.
Look at that. Bring that up.
Okay. I say I found it. That isn't necessarily true, but I'll explain what I've got and why it doesn't matter. Right. So let me hit play. 1 second. I just need to work out how to make it play now. I can make it play as when I'm previewing it.
Maybe you sent it to me. I think that's what you did.
I did, and I think you had issues making it play as well, and then we worked out how to make that work. It's fine. I'll share my whole desktop, and I can do it that way.
I'm going back. I'll find it.
It's trying to make a GIF play.
Sorry,
It's fine, right?
Spot. I found him. Which one
Got it?
is?
Right, I'm going to beat you to it. It's fine. I've got it playing in a fairly big screen. Right. Share entire screen. That one. Share. Oh, did that share? There we go. So yeah, ignore all my rubbish over here and my
so
my Tron.
The one
background.
I wanted, I think, is this one.
Oh, not the one I'm sharing.
No.
Fine, I'll stop them.
Yeah, you go away.
Yeah, I did. I know where I'm not needed.
Yeah, you're just. I don't care about you. Where's downloads? Downloads. I want.
So the reason I'm not sure if that version even was the one I sent you is
well,
that may have been the version that
maybe
Arno
that
from
was
Prinoff made and used in the presentation.
I thought there was one that showed. No, we can. It's actually not a video. It's the image. That shows, because I wanted to show seating positions.
Okay, that one. Yeah.
So this is a great example of how, depending on where your seating is, you can induce problems. And this is specifically addressing mainly with subwoofers, but every seating position, unless you get in between these lines, is going to be, and this doesn't even consider the vertical.
Yeah.
Remember, this is 3-dimensional, right? That you're going to have issues in the vertical as well as the horizontal. It's not like, oh, I can put things at any elevation and it's not an issue. You can drastically change
that
things.
map would work in exactly the same way. Obviously, that's a 6 meter by 4 meter floor plan. If you imagine that being a 6 meter long by 2.4 meter tall room, the map would be the same. It's still the halfway points, the quarter points, the 3/4 points.
Yeah.
Like the map would work as an elevation exactly as it does. Obviously, the frequencies would change from what those notes are on the side. But yeah, you want to stay off of those lines.
Yeah. So where would you put, if you were doing 2 rows based on this, where would you put them?
My first row would be 3.5 meters back.
Yep. That's where I would go.
The biggest open spot where the first, second, and third room length mode are least problematic, right? You've got no big major issues from the first 3 modes anywhere near 3.5 meters. Yep. So 3.5 meters is exactly where I want my best row. Second row, I'm going to put in behind that rather than in front of it. I'm going to call that my best row. That's my reference row. So that's like the ideal. Probably going to end up trying to squeeze the head in somewhere between 4.5 and 5 in that gap. So the seat's going to be broader than that. But if I can get the head in that line, in the white space there, that's realistically where I want them.
Now go vertical. Vertical.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Vertical will depend on the height of the room and whether I put a riser in. Like, we've got projects that are like 2.4 meter tall ceiling, and seated height in those seats is about 1.2. So basically, they end up exactly at halfway if you put them on the floor. So even with one row of seats, we've ended up building a small riser to shift them from that halfway line to the 3/4 of a 0.66. Like we've shifted them between the first and third mode with a small riser, even when there's only one row.
Yeah.
I would be aiming, I guess, to get one row just lower than halfway, one row above halfway, depending on the room height.
Yep. Somewhere here, somewhere there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is
And
the
sorry, you
the
go.
dimension that people do not think about, is the height.
No, 100%.
This causes a lot of people problems, and they will look at their frequency response plots and stuff, and they can't figure it out because they're only addressing things in the horizontal dimension. They're not thinking vertically. And when
Yeah.
you start thinking vertically, a lot of things open up. It's like in REW, people will render rooms, they'll render sub positions only in the horizontal, and they won't change anything in the vertical. When you could actually fix a lot of issues by putting subs at different elevations. So
Right.
just
It's a
something
pain
else
though,
to
isn't it?
consider.
Let's be
It
honest.
is, but I've got a
It's a
room that
pain.
we actually did this, and it solved a lot of problems. It made the response significantly better with no changes to EQ, which is ideally what you want to do. You want to address things in the analog before you start moving into the digital realm and making changes in EQ and PEQ and auto EQ and all that stuff. So I wanted to bring this up because we talked about seating positions, but we weren't really talking about modes and
Yeah.
visualizing it. So your screen wall again is up here.
Yeah.
We're looking in the horizontal right now. Ben and I would put our seats, our front row, your head would ideally be right in here.
Yep.
3.5 meters, about halfway up between these two mode lines, so your second and third mode. And then your second row would be on a riser that would go right here. And
Yep.
if you're on a couch, this is the other benefit to couches, is your seating height is typically lower. So if you're on a traditional cinema seat, you actually, your height may be up here. But
Yeah.
because you're on a low slung couch, your head comes down here. And
The
just in
one thing,
seating choice, you can fix a lot of potential
right.
mode issues.
And here's something that I don't think people consider when they're calibrating, right? So you're running your auto EQ
Mhm.
and you've got recliners in the room. So what height do you put your microphone when you run that auto EQ? Because you could have seat back up, you put the microphone in at where your seated ear height is, and then you recline straight back to where that third room mode was.
Mhm.
And you've never even attempted to fix it. You've never
No.
considered it exists. Any EQ you've done, even if you're using like Storm's active room control, it could potentially, if you've got different heights of subs, it could potentially have helped fix a room mode at that height. But you didn't put the microphone there because you didn't consider, oh, actually, I should take my measurements reclined. You could be moving yourself straight into a room mode issue. So
Yeah.
now you've got interaction of the height of the two rows, the riser you need, and the different height and viewing angles they make when they recline. Like if you're in the back row and you're reclining and people in the front row aren't, your visibility of that screen is now toast.
Yeah.
So now you've got to go higher in case what happens if you choose to sit in the front and no one sat, like you sit in the back, no one sat in the front, so no one's reclined them. Oh, you get up, go, you what you do, walk round to the front and go and recline all the seats in the front, like just to make sure they're not in your way. And then you go, it's not. I wouldn't say it's luxurious.
No, definitely not luxurious. And it's when you're doing those calibrations, if you don't consider that and put the mic in the correct position, you can actually make it worse
Yeah,
in wherever you're sitting. If it's
100%.
if it's fixing things at whatever the mic position is and you're reclined because you haven't taken to that account and you recline to where you actually listen, but the mic was measuring in a different position, you could have just made your position worse.
100%.
So mic needs to go, the reference position for the mic needs to go where your head is, where your head is going to be when you're listening.
Yeah.
And the last thing, one other thing to talk about with mics is I honestly don't like the idea of everybody leaving the room when you're fixing issues. I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel about that?
It's interesting. I mean, like, I guess when you say everyone leaving a room when you're fixing issues, you're thinking of the amount of rooms that we've been part of on show floors when there's a lot of people potentially in a room. But here's the thing. I've already admitted I don't have many friends. If I built a 12-room system, how would I even do a calibration with 12 water-based
that. But
absorbers?
you'd want
I'd have to
yourself
rent
in there,
people to
is
sit
my
in the room
point.
while I calibrated it.
My point is you'd want yourself in there or have some substitute for you in there, potentially,
Sure.
because you are an absorber.
Right.
And if you take yourself out, you are changing the acoustic properties of that space.
Yeah, 100%.
And this happens all the time when we're at shows where the room will get calibrated with very few people in the space. And then throughout the entire day, the room is full. And invariably, every single time after the first demo, people will look around and like, that doesn't sound very good. And you've just changed the acoustic properties of the space because now it's full of meat bags.
Right.
We're great absorbers. And you put enough of us in it, we're sucking out all of the acoustic energy in that space. So I argue, calibrate or at least have some level of substitute with the 99% use case in the room.
100%. It's a funny thing, and it's something I'd say I've had a disagreement with a couple of other professionals on doing noise floor readings. So we never aim to, like, we never promise a client, like, if we're contractually bound to a performance, we are never targeting a noise floor lower than NCB 10. NCB 10 is really, really quiet. Really quiet. Like, it takes a lot of isolation to make a room with everything on that's that quiet. And I've met a couple of designers who, these are expensive rooms. We're talking multi-million-dollar rooms that you're going to get this quiet. And they're like, well, we can get to NCB 0. Like, we can get it even quieter. Yeah, great. When you're not in the room. Sure, of course. Like, you're not going to measure that when you're in the room. What's the point in doing it then? If one human being just living in that room raises the noise floor to NCB 10, what's the point in designing a room that aims for 0 or -5, right? You cannot ever experience it. It's a mythical thing. My heart rate and my breathing, one person in a room will raise that to around NCB 10. So why bother designing it any quieter? There's my rant over, because it drives me nuts.
It is annoying. We do need to do the MBC, the meat bag coefficient. That needs to be our thing.
So I have a lot of things on humans, and it's quite funny, and I'm going to say this out loud. When we work on different continents, we define humans differently. So regionally, people are different sizes. They have different absorption coefficients at different frequencies, and they make different amounts of heat. They give out different amounts of CO2. So when you're defining the comfort in a room, in some territories, you need to accept the fact that people give off more heat than others. Like, it's entirely possible they're twice the size, which also means, like, seats in the US, let's be honest, are quite big often. Like, when you get a dedicated cinema seat in the US, they often have quite a big seat pan width, like 24 inches or more. I've seen 26, 28-inch wide seat pans.
Yeah.
I don't need that. I'm not slim, but I don't need a 28-inch seat pan.
I don't need 28, but I need something decently large. I'm not small.
Right. But if we go to other continents, like, I'm thinking in particular, like, if we say go to Asia, the idea of needing a 28-inch seat pan is absurd. Like, I guess in Japan, sumo wrestlers are going to need like a 45 or something, but no normal member of the population needs a seat pan that big. So at least spec seating to the right size for the people that are going to use it.
Yeah.
Because that helps. You can get more seats in if you spec the right size seats.
Yep. Very true. You got anything else you want to cover?
No, I'm just enjoying reading some of the questions, actually. We've got some fun questions and fun points. Derek's just said he's been in a super well isolated room and could hear the coke going down the esophagus of the person next to him.
And this is a big reason why anechoic chambers drive people mad, is because you hear things from inside your body that you don't normally hear.
You hear your own heartbeat.
Yeah. You can hear your blood
fluid
moving
in your ears. So yeah, I love a very, very quiet room, but not so quiet that I'm distracted by my own heartbeat.
Yeah. It does. You can't really measure this. Most people are not going to be able to measure this on their own because their mic's noise floor is going to get in the way.
Sure.
You do need a special microphone in order to measure this correctly. Your measurement mic does have a noise floor. So if you are listening to nothing, what you hear, what the mic is showing you for the SPL is not necessarily representative of the loudness of the room. Just keep that in mind. Your mic and your interface or whatever you're using and the electrical signals going through it do have a noise floor, just like everything else.
To take that measurement, we're using maybe $6,000 of kit, and the measurement takes a few minutes. So it takes hundreds of readings of two microphones facing each other really close. So bring my fans up, really close. So it finds every bit of signal that is the same to both of them and keeps that. And anything that's different on both of them, it subtracts over hundreds of readings. And it still takes, to get to the level we're measuring, it still takes like $6,000 of kit to do it. So if you've got a UMIC 1, you're not going to measure under 20 dB. Not going to happen because its own noise floor is that high. Right. Let's take some questions.
I've got a question from, there's only one. Not a lot of questions from this one. Prince Dorama 5691. So I got a 19 foot by 13 foot room after the treatment. I went 6'7" long riser by 5'10". That's for the back row and seats. The front row is 9 feet from the screen. Is that feasible? So I went long riser.
I can't even visualize that. I'm just working out how long it would take me to draw.
Does that mean that the riser's coming off the back wall? I'm not sure where the riser is.
Yeah, I think that's probably starting at the back wall. That would make sense. It's starting at the back wall.
I think that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, I'd honestly sit close. Well, no, I think that's fine. I don't think you're going to have it. You're 19 feet, a 6 foot riser, 6.5 foot riser means that the front row is going to be 13 feet or closer to the screen. I think that's perfectly fine, don't you? If that's what he means.
I'm thinking I might draw it and give a proper answer next time I might have it ready as an answer because I can't even.
You can't visualize that?
No, well, because it also depends on how big that screen size is, whether those dimensions work with that screen size. If you're then specing a projector that's going to fill that screen with enough light. So there's a few things to consider, but it theoretically sounds logical.
Yeah.
I don't think it seems far off.
No. And I think you would agree, and I think you said this at the very beginning, the more rooms you're in, the more you appreciate immersion in big screens.
Yeah.
They got to be properly placed. We talked about the height of the screen at the beginning of this. If it gets too high and your head's going like this, that's not ideal. But if it's properly placed and you can go big, you can go a lot bigger than you think. I take the THX reference for the main seating position and throw it out the window. What I tell my clients is if you've got a junk projector, you can buy a really cheap projector. If you've got a blank slate of a room, put a chair in there, fire the projector at a wall, and figure out what's too big.
100%. So, and that's really important that you said do it with a junk projector because this does scale, but not perfectly. If you just go up to the normal TV in your living room, right, you've got a 50 or a 60-inch telly, and you keep walking closer and closer to it till you recreate a 60-degree viewing angle, it'll be weird.
Yes.
So, yes, of course, you can judge the viewing angle you like using a smaller screen, Like, we've got a
No, I
4.8
don't
meter
think you
wide here.
actually
You
can.
can move around that room and go, okay, I like this angle, I don't like that angle. But if you're trying to do that off a 60-inch telly, you're not going to come up with the right result.
And the reason I think you can't do it this way is because your brain subconsciously knows the size of that screen. And you
Right.
sitting too close to it, it's going, this screen isn't that big. And the effect that you get from it subconsciously is totally different than having an enormous screen. It's like
Right.
I'm sitting 2 feet from a
There we go.
42-inch display
What's
is
that?
not
About
the
six?
same feeling of going to an IMAX.
No, like 60-degree viewing angle for me is about there on my phone. Well, I can't use that to decide if I want a 60-degree
No,
viewing angle. It's not going to
absolutely
work.
not.
And part of this is the comfort of focus, right? So when you do get really close to a screen, you're having to adjust your focus, right? That's actually effort to focus on something nearer than if it was something bigger far away. So you'll get discomfort and think, I don't enjoy this because you're actively having to use muscles to focus your eye on that thing you're now close to. So you need a screen that's in the right ballpark to start moving to and fro. You can't do it off a telly.
No. You need a project. You really need to be in like for like environment. And getting a junk projector, if you already have the projector, like some people are just taking what they already have and putting it into new spaces. That's a great way to do it. Just fire it at the wall, sit in a chair, and see what's too big. Or if you don't have the projector yet, tape it off.
Yeah.
Use some masking tape, put it on
Taping
the
it off.
wall.
Taping it off is the easiest way. I love taping it off for clients because then they can just walk into the room and see it at the scale in that room and make a decision. We just had a question about whether we've used a VR headset to do that. I haven't. We have signed rooms off using VR before, so I have built a full 3D model and let the client walk around it using a headset. I've personally never used that to define screen size. I don't know how well it would work. It should work well
Good.
if the VR is good enough,
Yeah.
but I'm not certain.
The reason you could get away with that is because it tricks your brain into providing other objects
Right.
that scale to a different reference. So if I'm looking at an object in 3D, and I know this from flight sim and stuff that I've done with 3D, your brain can get tricked really easy if it can't see anything else and it is able to pick up other things that
Yeah.
look like the correct size. And then I can use that scale to see a screen and be like, oh, okay, this makes
Yeah.
sense. But it's a very different feeling being in VR
Right.
than it is using like a
Yeah.
phone or a TV or something. So
There's
you
still
need
a very different comfort level of
yes.
relaxing at looking at something big far away against something
Yeah.
small but close.
And it still is not going to be ideal when comparing to taping it off or an actual projector firing at a wall.
Tape it off.
2 more questions, or actually that was the question asked by Croson. What about using VR to decide what your preferred viewing angle is? Yeah, so answer that one. And then big screen cinema, I'm not sure what you're asking. What would you guys choose for size for a room with 3 seats, 165, 235 to 1? Is he asking about the size of the room? I think that's what he's asking.
Size of the room for 165-inch screen. Hold the phone. I'll give you an answer to that.
So that's 1 row.
Let me work out the exact size. Oh, that's not loaded. I'm gonna work out exactly how big a 165 is. Let's make one. Hold on. I'm gonna draw a 165 screen and I'm gonna see exactly what its dimensions are.
This is very close to my room.
It's a 235 and it's gonna be 165 inches. Oh, that's really irritating because the tool I'm using doesn't do diagonal because I only work in width.
It's about
How big
100
is that one?
or just say 100 and well, I can get you a calculator. I know what the 16 by 9 is. Hold on, I can tell you. 235 diagonal 165. It's 152
Wide.
Yes.
Okay, now I just have to convert that into metric. 2 inches in millimeters. 3.8 meters, give or take. So, well, hey, let's just keep it in metric, right? I would say if you're just doing one row, somewhere around 1 times the width of the screen. So if you're between 0.8 times the width or 1.2 times the width, you're going to be in a really nice place. So if that is 152 inches, about what's that? About 11 feet? No, a bit more. 14 feet?
Mm-hmm.
12 and a half. So I'd want to be sat somewhere between 10 and 14 feet. You're going to be in that range, right? It's going to be 10 to 14 feet will be the right distance for me to sit from that size screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to be about 60% of the way back in the room. So once you've defined if you're going to be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 feet, somewhere in that 10 to 14, I would say going to be around 11 feet for me. I would go 11 divided by 0.6. I'd want an 18-foot long room for that screen with one row, give or take. Like that's as a real quick, I know I want that viewing distance. I want to be about 6% in the room, probably an 18-foot long room.
I'd argue for longer so that you can deal with acoustics and placement. If you're doing false walls, but that's me personally.
Oh yeah, okay. I hadn't even considered the space behind the wall. Yeah, okay. It's going to be 20 something feet.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's where I'd be.
But the reality is that when a room like that is built, they almost always get built the other way around. The room exists and you work out what you can put in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare, even for us, it's often rare to be given a completely blank slate and given free reign to define how big the box is.
To do this ideally, make the visible room smaller. Don't use the entire room visibly.
Yeah.
Because you're going to need space if you're doing AT screens, sub placement, speaker placement, projector placement. Just plan on the visible part of the room being smaller, but understand that the entire room is what is going to be dealt with acoustically. That.
So yeah, we didn't we didn't get anyone particularly telling us that we're wrong about the correct way to lay a room out. So I feel
you
like
keep coming in thinking things are going to be
yeah, I feel like I need to try harder.
Controversial, and they're not. Just preaching to the choir, my man.
I do like the comment. I've seen a guy in Russia that has an RP22 level 4 room with 2 seats. Clearly that room's not a cinema because some guy in the chat said so. Which, right, and that's really interesting. I don't know that room, but you can work out really quickly if it can physically be level 4 or not. So I often see people make claims of what a room is, and then really quickly you can work out that physics don't actually allow it. So there is a minimum size that would physically work for level 4, and 2 seats right up close, no arm together. You still need a room that's 6 meters wide. You just basically can't make the maths work unless the room is, so what's that, 19 foot, nearly 20 foot wide? What's 20 feet? Yeah, basically 20 feet. So if your room isn't 20 feet wide, it's almost impossible to achieve level 4, even for 2 seats. So it almost certain, I'm sure if someone's claimed it is, I'm sure they're right. But it is fun to see when people say they've achieved something that physics dictates they couldn't have done.
All right, one more question.
I'm sure this one probably is real.
And we can get out of it. Vedatus 789, does your seating distance position change with waveforming or room reflection and higher frequencies also define positioning? For example, if you sit up front, does balance of the reflected sound?
Right. There is an important point here. Do you know how we said don't sit on the 1/3, 1/4, half, 2/3, 2/4, 3/4, all of those lines we showed along the length? Once you've got waveforming, screw that bit up, because the first, second, and third order room modes you're going to fix with waveforming. So your all of those things that we were going to try and mitigate those early order room modes by sub placement and seating placement, a good waveforming array, you don't need to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
It just solves them.
Yep.
So it gives you loads of flexibility. You can now sit on the halfway point of the room. You can sit on the 2/3. You can sit on the 3/4 and not have those same issues because you will fix them. The key things are you want to be a minimum of 1 meter from a back wall. So waveforming does not work correctly as such. Like you won't get the full effect of it in the last meter of the room. You need a little bit of space for its effect to really work. So certainly when you're taking measurements, you don't measure anywhere in the last meter of the room. But that's where your limitation comes, is you now have a lot more flexibility because you're not mitigating low order room modes, but don't have a row right against that back wall because it does not work effectively in the same way in that last meter. Like you just need some space for the two planar waves to have formed and worked, which isn't going to happen if you've got a seat right at the very, very back of the room. So it does change. It changes the way we think about laying it out. Certainly, if we know it's going to be a waveforming room, we would approach that first bit of layout differently.
Got it. Okay. We'll leave it there. Well, Ben and I will come up with the next topic. He keeps thinking that things are going to be controversial, and they're not. So
try harder.
Maybe he'll come up with a controversial topic for actually next week, but we'll see. I'm going to doubt it. He was pretty committed that last week's he was gonna get me, and he didn't. And then he was committed that this one was, man, we're gonna get some people. I don't know. He's underestimating the enthusiasts. But we will leave it there. If you guys have any suggestions for comments or comments for future videos or comments on this video, please leave them on the VOD, not in the comments of this video or the active comments that are going on right now. Otherwise, we will not see them. But we will see you guys next Monday. So stay safe, enjoy your home theater journeys, and we will see you guys in the next one.